You're standing in the middle of a crowded subway station or perhaps a busy office corridor, and for a split second, the mask slips. Your lips move, a whisper escapes, a fragment of a thought, a rehearsal of a confrontation, or frantic instruction to your own lagging brain. You catch someone looking. A stranger's eyes meet yours, and in that gaze, you see it. The flash of judgment, the subtle recoil, the silent label of unhinged. While you quickly look away, heat rising to your neck, swallowing the rest of your sentence like a shameful secret. You feel that familiar cold sting of isolation, wondering if your mind is finally beginning to fray at the edges, if the boundary between the world inside your skull and the reality outside has become dangerously thin. You've been told since childhood that talking to yourself is the first sign of madness, a red flag of a collapsing psyche, the hallmark of the lonely, the broken, and the lost. But you've also noticed something else, something they never told you. You've noticed that when the world becomes a chaotic storm of noise and demands, that whisper is the only thing that keeps you grounded. You've noticed that your best ideas don't come in silence, but in the echo of your own voice. There's a profound existential weight to the sound of your own name spoken by your own lips. It is the most intimate conversation you will ever have, yet it is the one society fears the most. We live in a world terrified of the person who does not need an audience to speak because that person is fundamentally uncontrollable. Think about it. When you see someone on the street muttering to themselves, your instinct is to walk faster, to create distance, to protect your sanity from their chaos. We have been conditioned to see the externalized monologue as a glitch in the human operating system. But what if I told you that this habit you've been trying to hide is not a symptom of a breakdown, but the ultimate expression of a breakthrough? What if I told you that the very thing that makes people look at you with pity or fear is the secret weapon of the world's most elite minds, the silent architects of history and the pioneers of the future? Imagine the most powerful people on the planet, the CEOs who decide the fate of nations, the surgeons who hold life in their hands, the athletes who perform under the crushing pressure of millions of eyes. In the moments before they achieve greatness, they are not silent. They are whispering. They are talking to themselves. They are engaging in a sophisticated neurological ritual that most people are too afraid to even acknowledge. We have been lied to. We have been taught to suppress the very tool that allows us to navigate the labyrinth of the self. This video is not just an explanation of a habit, it is a clinical and philosophical autopsy of your inner voice. We are going to peel back the layers of social stigma and delve deep into the visceral reality of why your brain craves the sound of its own output. You aren't crazy. You aren't losing your grip. In fact, you might be the only one truly paying attention. While everyone else is drowning in the static of external validation, you are building a bridge between your conscious mind and your deepest instincts. You're participating in a tradition that spans from the Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome to the cutting-edge laboratories of modern neuroscience. The conflict you feel, the tension between your need to speak and your fear of being seen, is the exact point where genius is born. It is the friction between the social animal and the enlightened individual. In the next few minutes, we are going to dismantle the madman archetype. We are going to confront the existential dread of being the one who talks to themselves and transform it into a position of absolute power. If you've ever felt the shame of being caught in a conversation with no one else in the room, stay with me. Because by the time we are done, you won't just stop hiding it. You'll realize that the person you've been talking to all this time is the only one who truly has the answers you've been looking for. This is the psychology of the self-monologue, and it is time we stop whispering and start understanding the magnitude of what is actually happening when you open your mouth to find your mind. The world wants you quiet, predictable, and silent. Your genius, however, requires a voice. It's time to find out why you've been talking, and more importantly, what your soul has been trying to tell you. Let us go through the glitch, past the judgment, and into the core of the most powerful cognitive operating system ever designed. You have spent years suppressing this voice, desperately trying to fit into the sterile mold of normalcy, but today that charade ends. You are about to discover how to weaponize your internal and external monologue to increase your cognitive focus by over 20% and dismantle anxiety the moment it begins to constrict your chest. By the end of this journey, you will never see your inner voice as a quirk or a symptom of a fracturing mind again. You will recognize it as your most powerful cognitive operating system, a tool for radical clarity in a world of static. In an age where the digital landscape is specifically engineered to fragment your attention and every notification acts as a thief of your potential, this habit is the only thing keeping your brain from redlining into total, irreparable burnout. To ignore how you talk to yourself is to drive a high-performance Ferrari with a broken GPS. You possess all the raw power in the world, but you have no direction, no internal map, and no way to reach your ultimate destination. We are about to peel back the veil and reveal that your private speech is actually the first step toward true psychological sovereignty, the bridge between the chaotic, swirling depths of your subconscious and the sharp, structured edge of your intellect. If you are the kind of person who seeks the truth beneath the superficial noise of society, mark your presence and subscribe. Feed the algorithm so it knows you have found your tribe. Join the architecture of the few. Now, let us look at why this dialogue began before you even knew who you were. You have to understand that this urge to speak, this need to vibrate the air with your thoughts, is not a malfunction of your adulthood. It is a ghost of your most primal intelligence. Think back to when you were 5 years old. You played in the dirt, you moved your toy soldiers across the carpet, and you narrated every single second of it. You didn't do this because you were lonely. You did it because your brain was literally under construction. This is what the great psychologist Lev Vygotsky called private speech. For a child, thinking and speaking are the exact same thing. There is no internal sanctuary yet. Everything is external. Everything is a rehearsal for existence. Vygotsky argued that as we grow, this speech doesn't disappear. It simply goes underground. It becomes the silent inner monologue. But for you, the one who still speaks, the underground wasn't deep enough. You have retained a direct line to that raw developmental power. When you talk to yourself, you are tapping into the foundational layer of human cognition. You are refusing to let the socialization of the world silence the primary engine of your problem-solving mind. Most people lose this. They trade their raw cognitive feedback for a quiet, socially acceptable, and often paralyzed interior. You, however, have kept the machinery running out in the open. You're still building, still narrating, still constructing your reality out loud because your brain knows what the rest of the world has forgotten. That the word is the first step of creation. To speak a problem is to drag it out of the fog of abstract thought and into the cold light of the physical world, where it can be dismantled and defeated. Now, let's move from the soul to the circuit board. Let's talk about why your brain feels like it's firing on all cylinders the moment you start muttering. There is a functional, almost mechanical efficiency to this habit that would make a computer scientist envious. In 2012, researchers Gary Lupian and Daniel Swingley conducted a study that fundamentally changed how we view the relationship between language and perception. They found that participants who said the name of an object out loud while searching for it found it significantly faster than those who remained silent. Think about that for a moment. By simply vibrating your vocal cords, you're physically priming your visual cortex. You are essentially telling your brain, target identified, enhance focus. This is the search engine hack. When you are frantically pacing your living room, whispering, "Where are my keys? Keys, keys, keys," you aren't being frantic. You are running a high-speed diagnostic. You're making the concept of keys more real to your neurons. You're boosting the signal and drowning out the noise. In silence, your brain is a chaotic library with books scattered on the floor. When you speak, you're calling the librarian. You're imposing an architecture on the void. You've felt this, haven't you? That moment where a complex task feels like an insurmountable mountain until you start talking yourself through the steps. First this, then that, then we move here. Suddenly, the mountain becomes a staircase. You aren't just talking. You are coding your own behavior in real time. You are the programmer and the program, the master and the servant, working in a perfect, vocalized synergy. It's almost funny, isn't it? The world sees a person talking to themselves and thinks they're lost. In reality, you are the only one in the room who truly knows exactly where they are going. You are your own GPS, recalculating the route with every syllable. But we must go deeper into the realm of the third-person distance, what philosophers and emperors have called Iliism. This is where your habit moves from a functional tool to a mastery of the soul. There is a visceral, almost terrifying power in addressing yourself by your own name. Think of Marcus Aurelius in his meditations, writing to himself, correcting himself, coaching himself as if he were a separate entity. Why? Because the I is a place of pain. The I is where your ego lives, where your insecurities fester, and where your anxiety takes root. When you say, "I am stressed," you are the stress. But when you look at yourself in the mirror and say, "John, you are stressed, and here is why," something miraculous happens. This is what Dr. Ethan Kross from the University of Michigan calls psychological distance. By speaking to yourself as a you or by your name, you're literally stepping out of your own burning building. You become the observer rather than the victim. You are treating yourself with the same compassion, clarity, and cold logic that you would offer to a dear friend. You are bypassing the emotional centers of the brain, the amygdala, that screaming primitive alarm, and activating the prefrontal cortex, the seat of wisdom and strategy. This is why the world's most elite performers seem so calm in the center of a storm. They aren't just tough, they are talking to themselves in the third person. They are narrating their own victory before it happens. They are separating the self that feels the pain from the self that achieves the goal. You have been doing this instinctively. Every time you've whispered your own name to calm your racing heart, You were practicing an ancient form of psychological alchemy. You were turning your leaden fear into the gold of objective action. But now we must descend. We have walked through the history of your childhood and the biological machinery of your brain, but we have yet to face the most uncomfortable truth of all. You feel a sense of relief now, don't you? You feel validated. You feel as though your quirk has been given a badge of honor, a scientific seal of approval. But here's the soko naboka, the punch to the mouth that you didn't see coming. The most dangerous form of talking to yourself is not the one that makes people stare at you in the grocery store. It is not the whispering, the muttering, or the frantic searching for keys. The most dangerous conversation you're having is the one you cannot hear. It is the silent, subconscious monologue that has been running in the background of your life since the day you realized you were a separate entity from your mother. While you have been worried about looking crazy for talking out loud, you have been blissfully unaware that you are being bullied 24 hours a day by a ghost. You're living with a toxic roommate inside your own skull, a phantom narrator that is constantly judging, criticizing, and sabotaging every move you make. And because that voice is silent, you have mistaken it for your own soul. You have spent your entire life being a victim of a dialogue you didn't even know you were having. Think about the weight of that. Think about the thousands of hours of silent self-criticism that have shaped your posture, your career, and your relationships. Most people are walking around as containers for a voice they never chose. They are puppets of a default mode network that is programmed for survival, not for greatness. This is the reveal that separates the masses from the masters. The secret of the world's most elite minds, the top 1% of thinkers, creators, and leaders, is not that they are smarter than you. It is that they have learned to perform a radical act of psychological surgery. They don't just talk to themselves, they interview themselves. They have mastered the art of the internal interrogation. They have realized that the ego is a liar, a defensive shield that will say anything to keep you safe, small, and stagnant. So they bypass it. They treat their own mind like a hostile witness in a high-stakes trial. They don't ask, why am I failing? Because the ego will provide 1,000 excuses. They ask, what is the specific belief that is making me hesitate right now? They talk to themselves to force the subconscious into the light. They use their voice as a flashlight in a dark room full of monsters, and they realize that when you shine a light on a monster, it's usually just a shadow. You have to understand that your brain is a biological machine designed to find patterns. And if you don't give it a pattern to follow, it will invent one based on your deepest fears. When you talk out loud, you are seizing the controls of that machine. You're moving from a passive observer of your thoughts to an active participant in your destiny. But the transformation only happens when you change the phrasing. This is the aha moment that will redefine your existence. It is not about that you talk to yourself, it is about the structural integrity of the sentences you choose. Most people use their inner voice to narrate their misery. They use it to confirm their limitations. They say, I can't do this, or I'm so stupid. This is not talking to yourself. This is a slow-motion suicide of the spirit. The elite, however, use the third-person wedge we discussed earlier to perform an exorcism. They use their name not just for comfort, but for accountability. They say, John, why are you lying to yourself right now? They turn their voice into a scalpel. They cut through the layers of social conditioning and childhood trauma to find the raw nerve of the truth. They recognize that there is a self and there is a voice, and they are not the same thing. You are the one who listens. You are the one who decides which words become reality. The atmosphere of your life changes the moment you realize that your mind is not a monologue. It is a committee. And for too long, you have let the most fearful, broken members of that committee hold the microphone. You have been a spectator in your own head. But by externalizing your speech, by daring to vibrate the air with your intentions, you are taking the gavel. You are demanding order in the court of your consciousness. There is a terrifying beauty in this. It means that you are no longer a victim of your moods or your anxieties. You are the architect. You can literally talk yourself out of a depression, talk yourself into a state of flow, and talk yourself toward a version of you that doesn't even exist yet. But you have to be willing to be the person who speaks to the void. You have to be willing to be the crazy one who knows that the silence of others is just a lack of courage to face themselves. The most intimate, visceral, and revolutionary act you can perform is to look into the mirror, use your own name, and ask the one question that the ego is terrified to answer. Who are you trying to protect, and what are you willing to sacrifice to finally be free? The silence that follows that question is where your life actually begins. You are not talking to no one. You are finally, for the first time in your life, talking to the master of the house. And the master is finally home. Your brain isn't talking to no one. It is finally desperately listening to the only person who has the power to change your life. You. You have spent your entire existence running away from the sound of your own voice, fearing that it was a symptom of a breaking mind, when in reality, it was the only tool trying to save you from the suffocating noise of a world that doesn't care if you succeed or fail. The social stigma is nothing more than a filter designed to keep the weak, silent, and the strong predictable. Break that filter. Stop being your own critic and start being your own commander. Speak your truth into the physical air until your reality has no choice but to reorganize itself around your words. If you've ever been caught talking to yourself in public, if you've ever felt that heat of shame, I want you to reclaim that power right now. Comment the word architect below. Let it be our secret code, a signal that you are no longer a passenger in your own head, but the one holding the blueprints. You are building a sanctuary of clarity while everyone else is drowning in the static. Don't stop talking. The world is finally listening, but more importantly, so are you. Go and give your genius the voice it deserves.